Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Craig Pera from Sex Afflictions and Porn Addiction, a podcast dedicated to you creating healthy sexuality and a great life. I am so honored and privileged that you are here. Today, I want to talk about porn. I want to talk about specifics around porn. And I want to share with you some of the questions I ask my clients when we start working together to help them understand their sexuality and how it's morphed in a very different, non-judgmental way so they can learn something about themselves and step out of the shame place, which characterizes or which is how they're experiencing their porn viewing. Okay, because the pornography that you are watching is like a fingerprint. They are breadcrumbs to helping you understand your true sexual nature. I know it sounds crazy, right? Because your sex, you're probably thinking it's going off the rails. Look at what I'm watching. Look at what I'm doing. This isn't me. But it doesn't mean there aren't trends there that could be very important for you to understanding more about your sexuality. And what typically happens is guys instantly, they don't want to talk about what they watched. And I'll share with you a story. When I started working with George Collins, he was my therapist, a great, wonderful man in Walnut Creek, California. He wrote the book, Breaking the Cycle, Free Yourself from Sex Addiction, Porn Obsession, and Shame. And he's a former sex addict himself. And I had seen scores of therapists before. And here I am, I'm sitting down with this guy. I'm at rock bottom, the lowest I've ever been in my life. And this son of a bitch is asking me what kind of porn I watch. I don't want to tell him what kind of porn I'm watching. That's disgusting. I said, the naked kind. The kind where people are having sex. No, that answer wasn't good enough. He wanted to know the genre, the scenes, my go-to scenes, what did it for me? And it was in that moment where I was forced to reconcile that the pornography that I had been watching was violence directed at women, was abusive, was dominant. The man was dominant. The female was clearly the submissive. And look in that mirror. And look in that mirror. And in that look, I learned an awful lot about myself that changed the way I honor and respect that part of myself, that sexual part of myself, that part of myself that's dirty and disgusting and watching these filthy things. How do I heal that part of myself so I can engage with my wife, Michelle, in a healthy, constructive way? Whoa, crazy. See, if you step back, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, guys, so you know, right? The sex and the porn is always the symptom. It is always a symptom. I have never, ever worked with a man whose primary problem was sex addiction or porn addiction. Now, that doesn't mean that their sex is completely not screwed up. It often is. But that's still, it's never, ever the primary problem. The primary problem is lack of love for self. The common denominator that I have found in every single man that I've worked with, driving this chronic numbing, coping, and escaping is lack of love for self, period. So, but that being said, the overwhelming majority of my clients who I work with one-on-one, their sexuality is broken. So if we step back from, I think, the narrow window of the porn addiction and sex addiction label, it's too narrow to describe what's going on. It's not an accurate diagnosis for a whole bunch of different reasons. Because at the center of this problem, there is an intimacy disorder. So I encourage you to try that label on for size. Do you have an intimacy disorder? Is that what you should be focusing on? And is your pornography use a component of your inability to express yourself in an authentic way, in an honest way, in a committed monogamous relationship, if that's your thing, as is the case for the overwhelming majority of my clients? They are in monogamous relationships. So And that word authenticity, there's another expression, another diagnosis that I like. And let's not forget, the American Psychiatric Association has rejected sex addiction and porn addiction as a label for a number of very good reasons. It doesn't mean that people aren't acting out compulsively, but calling it a disease and addiction has a whole bunch of negative consequences. And quite frankly, the long-term identification with the problem, the self-proclamation of addict for the rest of your life, to me is preposterous. That might work for some of you, but for the overwhelming majority of you, that's you giving too much power to the thing and not focusing on healthy sexuality. So let's focus on healthy sexuality. Here's the other diagnosis that I like a phrase coined by a counselor, the author of the book Decoding Your Kink, called Galen Faust is his name. And that's a book for men who are trying to reconcile their quote unquote kinky nature with society norms, their spiritual beliefs, how they were raised, attitudes around sexuality. And the phrase that he coined, which I absolutely love, is called sexual authenticity disorder. Sexual authenticity disorder. So let's think of your problem from one of those two perspectives. You have a sexual authenticity disorder. You are unable to sexually express yourself in an authentic way for a variety of different reasons, and your porn is a symptom of that. You have an intimacy disorder, a challenge around connecting with other human beings. Your porn is still a symptom of that. That doesn't mean, though, that the porn isn't important. It's very, 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 very important. So I want you to think of these questions. And I want you to think of these questions without any judgment, without any shame, without any negativity whatsoever, but just be brutally honest with yourself. Because if you don't, you are ignoring important data. This is something that you may be doing every single day. This may be the only type of imagery that's able to get you off. You can't ignore that and write that off to shame and you're dirty and disgusting. That data is important. So, question one, what kind of porn do you like to watch? Think about that for a second. What do you type into the search bar? What genre do you click on? Bring an open, honest discussion to the type of porn that you are watching without any shame. What is your favorite? You know what it is. Don't pretend you don't. You know what it is, right? Are you a grown man watching teen porn? By the way, the most popular genre of pornography probably in the world, certainly in the top 3, the teen porn genre. We're wired for younger, right? There's that dominant, submissive part. We're looking for significance, want to be in charge. So naturally, there's a whole variety of different reasons which would attract men to that genre of pornography. Now you have to step back and ask yourself, is this making me happy? Well, maybe it's making you happy, but the second question is going to answer it for you. Is this healthy? Is this healthy? You're a married man. You're in a long-term relationship. This is not helping me perform sexually with my partner. So understanding what kind of porn you watch is very, very important, particularly if there's a fetish, particularly if there's one thing that you keep going to, particularly if there are attributes of the pornography that represent submission or dominance. So many of my men are inauthentic when it comes to expressing their dominant or submissive sides in a sexual relationship. They feel ashamed of them. They're dirty and disgusting. And so they just throw the baby out with the bathwater, and then they, I got to do missionary, and it's got to be holy, and it's like that. We've lost that ability as men to express our raw, authentic sexual energy. Porn has emasculated so many of us, and so many of you listening to this podcast. Now, thousands of you are listening to this podcast. I am so honored. I am so grateful. I'm so glad that you are here to have this real conversation about masculinity in a hypersexual age. In an age where pornography is available everywhere, any time of the day, and sexual health isn't something that has been ingrained in us in a very deep powerful way. In fact, most of us got no sex education, or the sex education we did get was dripping with fire and brimstone, something along the lines of either woeful, complete ignorance, or sex is dirty and disgusting, and you save it for someone you love. How's that working for you? Okay? So understanding what kind of porn you watch can give you a number of very powerful clues about your sexual authenticity. The porn may not be representative of where you want to be from a healthy perspective, but if you're watching dominant porn, if you're watching submissive porn, if you're watching one person in a particular role, then there's an element, a component of that wired into your sexuality, and it would be foolish to ignore that. You ignore it to your peril. You ignore it to your peril. Here's another question that I want you to think about. Has your sexual taste morphed or changed possibly because of porn? Think about that for a second. Where did you start? Now, my guys in their 40s like me, they started with catalogs. Oh boy, have we come a long way, baby. Remember being aroused by a picture of a naked woman? For you guys, around my age, talk to me. Like, what did you start with, right? Naked people in magazines. Oh my God, wouldn't you just kill to go back to those days where there was a certain innocence, purity? Little did we know how we were being corrupted and hurting our sexual development, making it worse, making it harder, numbing, coping, and escaping. This habit that started at such a young age that's gone on for decades. Still the symptom, but sexual health is important. Why? Because sex is powerful. Sex is powerful. It's one of the most powerful drives in human nature. Children whose sexuality has been disturbed, abused at a young age, kill themselves at a higher rate. If that doesn't tell you that sex is powerful, I don't know what will. So how have your sexual change morphed because of porn? Here's another one for you. Has the porn you watched become more graphic since you started? Has the porn you watched become more graphic since you started? My answers here are unequivocally yes. By the time I was done, I was watching transgender porn, built into a inability to understand the fact that I was touched as a child by an older neighborhood boy. I did engage in homosexual acts, exploring as a child and as a young adult. And I found this happy medium in trans porn. The penis and the breast, and it wasn't as confusing. Of course, it's confusing. I mean, just think about that for a second. And the porn that I was watching was very dominant, was very abusive, and that represented a lack of control that I had as a child. I never felt that I had control, so getting that control sexually was so important. And my desires around that place were shamed. I wasn't able to express that dominant part of myself in a long-term committed relationship with a human being, with my wife. That was the dirty, disgusting part of me. And that dirty, disgusting part of you, brothers, there are clues there. That sexual energy, that darker side of your sexuality must flow. Must flow. You keep damming it up. You keep ignoring it. You keep stuffing it down. What do you think is going to happen? You are going to suffer. So here's a couple of other practical questions that I want you to think about, because, while what I typically find is that when men come to me, their porn use in many cases is out of control. It's out of control. It's out of control. They just can't even fathom getting their arms around not doing this thing. It has taken over their lives. It has become their primary numbing, coping, and escaping strategy. So by using this data, you're able to identify your red zone. And the red zone is the area, the device, the location, the time when you do most of your porn use. And what men find, what most people find, is that if they were able to really hit the areas between 9 and 12 at night, just that small block of time, they'd be able to cut their porn use by 80%. So that's how I identify your red zone, the time, the place, the device, the location where most of your porn use is happening. And by answering these practical questions, you now have an ability to take some steps, to take action, to do something different. Why? To break a habit, you have to make a habit. So you identify that red zone through answering these following questions, and then choose to do something different in that same time period. What kind of porn do you like to watch? Have your sexual taste morphed or changed, possibly because of porn? Has the porn you watch become more graphic since you started? And now for some of the practical questions. When do you watch? What are the time periods when you watch the overwhelming majority of your porn? Where are you when you watch? On what device do you use when you watch? And here's some metrics to pay attention to. You want to stop doing something, yeah, you got to do something else, but also bring some data and some metrics to the thing you're trying to stop doing. How many times per day? For how long? Do you pay for it? How much do you pay? Some of you guys are forking over shitloads of money, especially on those cam girls. Some of you guys are spending thousands and thousands of dollars. I've had clients with tabs over $50,000. They have spent on porn. They have spent on cam girls. That's usually where the damage comes in, because they're trying to get an unmet need, right? All of your negative behavior is a function of your unmet needs. So why are you watching this? Why are you doing this? Should you completely discard that, throw that away? That's dirty and disgusting, and change it and, oh, look, I'm not doing it anymore? Not good enough. You will return to that place until you understand the deeper nuances of your sexual imprint, of who you are as a sexual male. Who are you as a sexual being? What do you like? What don't you like? What are your fantasies? How to incorporate that fantasy into lovemaking with a partner? Completely foreign to me. I had no idea how to do that. I repressed my sexuality, and guess what? It came out anyway in a terribly unhealthy place. I don't want that for you guys anymore. I want you to learn from my mistakes. What do you like to watch? What do you like to watch? And I asked this question before. I like to ask it again. Sometimes you get different answers. Here's one. Tell me about your go-to scene. So picture this. You're 5 hours into a porn bender. You know you got one more in you. Where do you go? You know what I'm talking about too. That's when you go over to the dark side. Where do you go? What does that journey say about your sexuality? Is it making you happy? Is it healthy? Right? What attributes of it might be healthy? What attributes might represent repressed sexuality that's getting that need met through pornography? Are you sharing with your partner your desires, your fantasies, what you like to do? The answer for most people listening to this podcast is no, because their porn use and the shame around it has corrupted that exploration, has corrupted that part of themselves, robbing you of the ability to be a sexually authentic male in your relationship. You've lost your way. And I couldn't express this dominant side with my wife because I felt it was so dirty and disgusting and shameful. It was all in the porn. But when I finally had the courage to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what really drives me wild, she said, oh, cool. Wish you would have told me that before. Wish we would have had this conversation many years ago. Maybe we could have avoided some of this pain and suffering. Thanks, Craig. She was pissed. I never gave her the chance. I never gave her the chance because I was too ashamed. I was so ashamed, so embarrassed, and such a liar and such a cheater. I went out and got those needs met other places. I never gave my wife the chance. That's so unfair. It's so unfair. If you're in a committed relationship, be committed, be honest. Tell me about your go-to scene. Here's a couple of other questions I want you to think about. Do you cheat? Do you see prostitutes or go to massage parlors? You understand the risks associated there. I've had clients call me with the press at their door because of a sting operation. Ugh. That is difficult, that is sticky, and that is expensive. because you also got to pay a lawyer to defend you in court. How much do you spend? How much do you spend on prostitutes? Could that money be spent in a better way to help you become a better version of you? So I want you from this podcast to step back and reflect on, what are you watching? And what clues might that consumption of pornographic content tell you about your sexual authenticity? What might it tell you about your intimacy disorder? Where are you expressing needs in a terribly unhealthy way and unable to express those needs in a healthy, committed, monogamous relationship? What's getting in the way? The shame around what you're looking at and what you're doing? Your inability to accept your sexual being and express it in a healthy, constructive way? What is getting in the way? So do not discount what you're watching. In this journey, do not throw that data away. Instead, embrace it and use those breadcrumbs to learn more about your sexual authenticity, to learn more about that sexual imprint that's wired in you. Stop pretending it's going to go away. It's not. It's not. You can channel it. You can control it, but you can't channel and control it if you don't know anything about it. If you're still operating in the dark, trying to control this quote unquote beast, that you have no idea where it begins, where it ends. So through this journey is an opportunity to learn more about yourself than you ever imagined. Dig in, do the work, dive into your shame, and dive in hard and learn about yourself so you can be a sexually authentic human being and stop living in shame and wasting hours and hours and hours throwing your powerful sexual energy away to pornography. Life is too short to suck, brothers. Sisters too, I'm talking to you. And remember to embrace your power of choice. I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching and listening. Love you all. Bye-bye.